Hello, everyone, and welcome to United Way. Live United. I'm Terry Westerfield, and joining me today, we have friends who are in to talk about rebuilding our region. We're also here to talk about how we're going to do that, how we're going in some of the more modern direction in what solar energy, energy efficiency, and all those things can do as we're still in the rebuilding process. I want to welcome to the program Steve Zimmer, who is the Vice President of, now here's a long name, Steve, Community Mobilization, No Place Like Home Initiative for United Way of Southeast Louisiana. Welcome back to the program, Steve.
Thank you, Terry.
Also joining Steve, we have Nicholas Napolitano. Now, he is the marketing manager with Posigen Solar Solutions. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Terry.
And also joining Nick today, we have in Tom Nyhart. He is the CEO of Posigen Solar Solutions. And my friend, Ms. Laura Paul. Laura is the executive director of lower9.org. Good morning. I want to thank you all for being here because it's almost that time, folks. 8-year anniversary.
Thank you for having us.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We've all lived through it. We've seen what it's done. But as the renaissance and the rebirth of our region has continued post Katrina and Rita and Isaac and Gustav, and we could go on and on, there are people out there who are still rebuilding or repairing, and those who are looking for maybe a change of place. They've decided with current flood insurance rates, et cetera, it's time to move somewhere else. But in all of this, we're talking about building. And Steve, I want you to start it off because it is something that people sometimes in other places of the country say, well, my goodness, 8 years since the hurricane and people still aren't home? Well, there are a myriad of reasons, and we're trying to address those.
Well, actually, a little quick history. Since 1906, they've studied disasters, and they've found that there's a correlation between how long it takes to recover from that disaster and how long it took to get out of the front end part of it. And according to that formula, this is a 11 to 14-year recovery for Katrina. So we're just at year 8, and we're doing really good when you look at it on a 11 to 14-year scale. So this is progress. This is positive. That's not a negative. So that's the first thing I think that's important to say. We are doing a good job at recovery despite some incredible impediments that got in the way to being successful with bureaucratic stuff, with inefficiencies that were out there, with duplications of things, with theft and fraud that went on with contractors and others. So let's celebrate at 8 years how far we've come, not look at it and say, oh, how far you still got to go, or what's wrong with you, which is totally false.
Well, I think you do. No, it's good. It's very good that we have done this much. And again, unless people have realized it firsthand, and until these natural or man-made disasters hit, people have no idea. And because, as you said, some of the challenges are also because of where we are and the huge swath of landmass that was inundated by water and the problems we had. And that leads me right back to Laura, because Laura, lower9.org, give us a little history of your group, because when you think of the Lower 9, immediately people think of, wow, that was hard hit. It was underwater.
Certainly was. Not all sections of the neighborhood were underwater. We do have about 50% land at or above sea level. A lot of our houses and a lot of our neighborhood is very close to the river. The section of the neighborhood which is called Holy Cross, but the percentage of residential properties in the Lower 9th Ward that were rendered uninhabitable in 2005 was 100%. So a lot of people ask me what's taking so long. With regard to our organization and the work that we do, we rebuild residential properties. We use volunteer labor to do that. We have a little bit of skilled supervision in the form of staff. But I always tell people it takes us a little bit longer than it does, say, a licensed general contractor. We do bring the cost to rebuild down to about 30%, though, of open market rate, which is a really big help to the people in our community. So, but what I do try to tell people is we're not rebuilding one house. We're rebuilding every house, and that is taking some time, as Steve said. I would estimate the recovery of our neighborhood would be a little bit longer than that 11 to 14 year figure. I would guess, I know that the FEMA closeout date for Katrina is 2025. So I think we might be at it a little bit longer, particularly in the Lower 9th Ward where things have been a little bit slower.
Now, how did you come down and be, well, please, let's talk, because we've got to say, you've come quite a distance to come and help out, and you've stayed. You're making your home here.
I am. I just recently purchased a home in Holy Cross, as a matter of fact. So I'm here to stay very much. I was pretty determined to stay prior to that. I came here from Montreal. I'm Canadian. I've been down here since about 5 months after the storm. And I volunteered with an organization that was a United Way partner for 14 months. And I've been working in recovery with volunteer organizations ever since. And let me just say, Lower9.org was privileged to work with volunteers from 16 separate countries last year. People are still coming down. People are still giving of their time and their skills. And it is a miracle and a godsend to us and to this city. And I think most of us know that this city would be nowhere without that volunteer effort. We're so grateful for it.
And Steve, maybe you can weigh in on that as well, because I know that, well, let's talk a little bit about the building partners that Laura mentioned, because we have a group, talk about No Place Like Home. It is an initiative that we have, and it involves so many different groups that are our rebuilding partners.
Yes, United Way as an organization is a fundraising organization, not a rebuilding organization. And a lot of people think they can call us up and we'll come and rebuild their house, which is not what we do. We have a number of partners that we work with, Lower 9 being one of them, and I'm in the process now of trying to figure out how many houses have our partners completed by the time of the 8th anniversary. Laura, what was your number?
65.
65 homes. Another of our partners, St. Bernard Project, will be celebrating this next week, the 500th home that they will have rehabbed. And a number of other agencies that we work with have those kinds of thresholds that they're we as United Way have supported 1,999 rebuilds and new construction since Katrina, working with those partner agencies. Our goal was 2013 by 2013, so we've got 14 more houses if we can get them done. If we can raise money for 14 more houses, we can get it done. So that's part of the process, and we're excited about that.
Well, I want to come back to both of you and talk about the criteria that you use for whom you help rebuild, et cetera. But I've got to ask Nick and Tom to weigh in, too, because as we're looking at the rebuilding, and a lot of it is done by volunteers, but it comes in funding from so many different sources, some people are starting to look at, wow, if I'm rebuilding, maybe I should think about how I rebuild differently. What can I do to be more efficient, or what can I do to really help? You know, I love my old home. I want it to have that character. I want it to be what it was, but wow, I really did have some high bills. Maybe I could do something that would make it more efficient. And that's where the two of you come in.
Right. I mean, that's what, when we formed Posigen, the first thing we looked at was how can we help low-income homeowners save money. So we looked at programs from weatherization, energy efficiency, renewable energy. And after investing a lot of time looking at what made the most sense, it's energy efficiency and it's renewable energy. So we want to save power and we want to make power. And by pairing the two of them up, we're able to really have an impact in their lives. You can go out and put solar panels in anybody's house, and it's going to create a certain amount of electricity for them. But reducing the consumption, going into the house and putting in the programmable thermostats and sealing it up and working on the air conditioner and doing those things, putting in the CFLs, it makes a tremendous difference. And those are lasting differences. So people that come in and especially in aging houses like we have around here, we can have a huge effect. I've seen people lower their monthly utility bills by $200, $250 because their houses are basically like sieves. The cold air is blowing out the walls. It's not staying in the house. We can go in with 20 tubes of caulk and make a big difference. And then when we do all those additional things, and we work with the community too on education. It's about how do I save power? It's not always just. Some people are very motivated by the green aspect and the environmental aspect, and in renewable energy, we always stay focused on all the good things we're doing. But just saving money. How do I do little things that save me money every day? And then, wow, those really add up to a lot at the end of the month.
Well, then, and here I'd like you to weigh in a little bit more, because sometimes when you're talking about solar panels or the energy efficiency, some people, because they've already perhaps, for instance, having their home rebuilt, may also be, I don't know if I can afford it. And you said it was for low income. How? Who is eligible? How do they go about even inquiring as whether or not that they should involve themselves with solar energy and with energy efficiency?
Well, see, that's always been the big barrier of entry. So a lot of people say, well, it's just the Jennifer Anistons and the Brad Pitts, and Brad Pitt did a great job down here, and we appreciate everything everybody's done, but they think those are the only people that can talk about solar panels and renewable energy and all these other things. So, at Posigen, we went out to U.S. Bank and said, hey, how do we bring a program and put it together for the low-income homeowner that really would benefit the most? If I save that customer $50 or $100 a month, that really impacts their budget. They're spending that money on clothes or on food, on prescription drugs. Somebody's making $100,000 a year, they probably don't know that they're saving $50 or $100 a month. So by partnering with U.S. Bank, we were able to bring a program in that there is no upfront cost. There is no barrier of I've got to have this much money, or I have to have a credit check, or I have to have a certain credit score. And what we do is we go in and we take care of putting it all in. U.S. Bank owns it and leases it back to the customer. So the customer is making this low payment of $50 or $60 a month, but their savings is $70, $80, $100, $120, $160 a month. So it's a net positive for them from day one. On day one, they've got more money in their pocket than they did before. So there's no barrier of entry. There's no upfront cost for it.
Now, I know one of the things that we've been talking about, Positive has come out and actually been looking at the United Way building. For those of you who don't know, we are at 2515 Canal Street, right there between North Rocheblave and Durgenois, and where they're doing all the building for the new hospital complex, the medical complex. And I tell you what, it's a lovely building, but I remember Steve, we had about 6 feet of water, somewhere along. I think on a good day, every now and then you can still see the line on the building. But it is an older building, same thing. It's either, you're hot in summer or you're very cold in winter and everything in between. And it is a building that, hey, I tell you what, as a nonprofit, we try to put every dollar, we are good stewards of the donor dollar. And so that every dollar that we collect that's been designated out and then we're going somewhere, of course we're going to do that. But we also have our own overhead that we want to reduce because we fall into that. An older building with the air, Steve, we know about your office in the corner. I think you could do a barbecue out back there.
It varies. It's either very cold or very hot.
And so having some of the energy efficiency, some of the things that we're starting to do in the building, but solar panels upstairs on our building, on our roof, everybody's kind of excited about the idea, saying, wow, well, this is interesting. What would it do? Well, I think we're going to be the first people actually right around our neighborhood, and we're thinking, well, that's neat. Maybe others will start to do it as well. And I think it's really great for you to have the gesture for the nonprofit community because we, as above all, have been working so diligently to help everyone else in the recovery.
You know, and that's one of the things that we looked at. We've donated a number of systems to needy families, and we work with other nonprofits to help out. And we thought, how can we have a lasting impact on one of the core nonprofit organizations in New Orleans? That's when we went to United Way and said, would you mind if we put $75,000 worth of solar panels on your roof and just gave it to you? And amazingly, they said yes. So we're pretty excited about the program over at Posigen.
But we were concerned. I know we had to walk around and look at the roof and structurally whether it can support it. And I think it's one of the questions that some people would ask, again, about the older homes that are being renovated. Are there certain roof lines or certain buildings that make it more difficult to think about the solar panels, but then again, the energy efficiency may be a better choice for them as opposed to a combination of the two?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you can put solar up and generate electricity, that's fantastic. But there are homes that, they've got a big tree, they're facing the wrong direction. Some of the roofs are structurally facing challenges, but energy efficiency works everywhere. I mean, our executive director, Beth Galante, eats, breathes, and sleeps energy efficiency. And she says every house can be helped. And it really makes a big difference. And it's not for a lot of cost. For very little dollars, you can really make a big impact. It's the biggest ROI, the biggest return on investment you can get is spending $1 on energy efficiency.
Well, when I think more and more of it's popping up. I was driving to work the other morning, and I was stopped at a light. And it's usually what I'm fortunate just to kind of drive through. But what was interesting is since I'm there sitting, I looked up, and I couldn't believe 3 houses in a row now sporting new solar panels. So I'm like, all right, my neighborhood's getting with it. People are changing. My next door neighbor just did it. I said, well, maybe this is something I need to look into as well because when the bills go up. But one thing that people often ask about that, too, is about solar power and how much you save, but does it get sold back to the electric company? How do all those things work?
Well, luckily we do handle that from start to finish for every one of our customers, but that is how it works. You're producing electricity, but solar panels are either on or off, right? And then the higher up in the sky the sun gets, the more they're producing. So at night, you're taking power off the grid and you're buying it from Entergy just like you normally would. Then during the day, as the sun comes up, you start to produce energy. And somewhere around 11 o'clock, those solar panels are producing more electricity than your house is consuming. So at that point, you're pushing electricity back on the grid. It's going to your next door neighbor, it's going to the school across the street, it's going down to the grocery store, and Entergy's buying it back. So you're selling energy back to Entergy, and then you're buying it from at night. And so that's what's called net metering. At the end of the month, they add up how much you bought, how much you sold back, and then you pay the difference. And it's a substantial difference.
Well, I tell you what, it's very interesting, and again, with all the rebuilding that's going on, Laura, is this something, because there is another group that shall remain nameless, perhaps alluded to by Tom, that's been doing some things in the Ninth Ward, sporting some of those solar panels. But with the homes that you're redoing, is this something that, and as a new homeowner, that you could even think about, or that we need to get involved
in? It's funny.
in?
As a new homeowner, I should probably sit and talk with Tom. But no, I think Make It Right is the name of the organization that are doing a lot of work in green building in the community. And in fact, the Lower Ninth Ward, to my understanding, has the highest solar energy production in the city right now, which is amazing. And I think that it has a lot to do with that work that's going on there. Lower9.org, our clients and the work that we're doing on a significantly smaller budget. And with people who tend to have significantly smaller pocketbooks. So we encourage the use of energy efficient materials in rebuilds. We encourage the use of flood damage resistant materials like pressure treated lumber and paperless drywall, things like that. Our homeowners' primary concern is always going to be what can I do to get back in my home as quickly as possible and as affordably as possible. What PosiGen is talking about here sounds like a great solution for some of our clients who can't make an outlay of cash from the very beginning on an install like that, when really what they're trying to do is still, this long after Hurricane Katrina, after the levee breaches in 2005, still just trying to get back into their homes.
And Stephen, maybe you can talk about some of our other building partners too, because Laura and Lower9.org is fabulous, but we also have some others, and I think you've all worked in tandem at one point or another as well, and especially again with the volunteers.
Our active partners right now are Project Homecoming, which is working primarily in the Gentilly neighborhood, the Epworth Project, which is on the North Shore, the Rebuilding Together New Orleans, which is part of the Preservation Resource Center. It's actually been in existence before Katrina, about 10, 15 years before Katrina, so they're the oldest rebuilding organization. So those are our major partners. St. Bernard Project, which I already mentioned, that we're working with now. We've worked with others in the past, some of the Habitat for Humanity chapters, and some organizations. Oh, another one is Phoenix of New Orleans, PNOLA as it's referred to. So they're all different. They all have pretty much one thing in common. They use volunteer labor to reduce the cost. They all have certain standards in terms of working with people who have been most vulnerable to recovery, and working with individuals with certain standards such as how efficiencies. They do blow tests and make sure that there's what's possible with the money that's available. But they all work on shoestrings, and it's a continuous game of trying to find money and long waiting lists of people in need.
And it's always important to make sure that you have good professionals in there doing the work. There's a lot of people out there that talk about doing good energy efficiency work. But it's different with the people that execute the right way. So making sure that the auditor is a BPI certified auditor, that the people are doing the work, have the proper license, the proper experience. Beth she's wonderful, and I'm sure she drives her subcontractors crazy, but she's always making sure that everything's done exactly right, that not only do we test it on the front end, we do that blower test, we do those duct blaster tests, and the guys walk around with those cool little cameras, the infrared cameras that show them where the air is going in and out, but then that the work's done right, and then we do a test at the back end to make sure that we can document the savings. And that's important. It's really neat at PosiGen. We do a report once a year that says this is how much money you save because your solar panels create electricity, but then this is how much money you saved just based upon the energy efficiency work we did. And oh, by the way, if you did these other things we talked about just in the education part and changing your behavior a little bit, this is how much more money you would have saved versus what you'd paid the electric company.
Tom, thank you for bringing that up because it's an important part. Our partners, our nonprofit rebuilding partner agencies, in some cases have on staff licensed professional workers, but or they bring in the professionals for those areas where they don't have that license or that ability. And in fact, that's why you and Laura have been talking to each other.
Right.
So that's a good example of how where the skill or the license doesn't exist, you bring in the professionals. So.
You know, Steve, it's interesting. I find that the nonprofits in town really check their people out, check their contractors out better than any commercial enterprises I know. They put them through the ringer to make sure that what they're delivering to these people that need it the most are the best. I know Beth was over with Global Green and NOLA Wise for 8 years, and she's as tough as they come on vetting people. So I got kudos to you guys for how much time you spend making sure you get the right people.
There's a reason for that, and that is so many of the people that we work with have been victims of contractor fraud and abuse. So it is central to the mission of these organizations.
And also with the people that are part of the rebuilding, there is usually criteria, and I know that, Laura, if you could share some of that, because it tends to be elderly, those perhaps who might have an infirmity, others who have been victims of contractor fraud for some of the organizations, and you have your criteria as well.
Actually, our criteria are quite simple. In order for us to consider rebuilding a home for you, you have to have been a resident of the Lower Ninth Ward in 2005. And you have to sign an agreement with us that says that you are prepared to live back in that house and use it as your primary residence once we're done. We do prioritize based on things like age and infirmities and other things like that. But those are our basic requirements. And our application process is extraordinarily simple. It's a one-page application. We walk through it with you. We try to keep it as simple as possible. We feel like people have been subjected to enough paperwork.
You know, Terry, you brought up a really good point that Laura and I were talking about this morning, is there are predatory people out there. And the people that need the help the most, the elderly or the low income, sometimes aren't in a position to check out the companies as well as they should. And we know even in the leasing business and solar leasing business, there's people out there that are charging very substantial amounts that are different than what we're charging and what other companies are charging. So Posigen and most of the other reputable companies out there take into account the tax credit programs, and they're only charging the difference from what a system would normally sell. But there are leasing companies out there signing 15, 20, 25-year leases that are really having the customer pay 3 and 4 times as much as they should. Those are a very small amount, but make sure they check it out. Make sure they look at the fine print and compare. Always compare to other companies, because most people out there are doing business the right way.
And Tom, you brought up tax credits, because there are indeed, in fact, Louisiana, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was one plan or program, but the funding has run out. But a lot of people were very, very involved and really looking to try to get the funding to do more kind of solar work, energy efficiency, and basically go green.
Right, and the funding hasn't changed right now. They've what they have done, and I applaud them for, is they've policed it and said, okay, you need to have your prices be in a certain range. So they've put in some price caps, and then they've changed the program. So the program stayed the same for this year with the price cap in place, and the fact that you have to have ARA compliant, American Recovery Act compliant products that you use, but after the first year, the program changes significantly. So not as a sales pitch, but I would encourage you, if you're going to get solar panels, please get them before December 31st, because your price will be substantially lower than on January 1.
So that is a good note there. Steve, I want to go back, and Laura, I want you to weigh in one more time, too, because on this 8th anniversary, and Steve, you kind of said at the beginning, it's not so much what still has to be done, which there is, but to celebrate how far we've come, when there are many who about 8 years ago are saying, is New Orleans going to come back? What's going to become of this city and of this region? And the answer is yes, we are resilient, we are strong, we come back. We are such an integral part of the fiber of this country, the history, the economy. I can't imagine this world without New Orleans, and I don't think any of us can, and that's why we are a growing population. We're almost back to where we were.
I think one thing that we sometimes have to stop and remember is that the Katrina event meant that almost 200,000 dwellings experienced substantial damage. That's bigger than many cities, many counties, and parishes across the country. So the task in front of us was incredible, and we've come a long way in that. So many of the houses are now rebuilt. Many are better than they used to be. We have a strong housing stock. We still have some properties that are blighted that need to be torn down or rehabbed, which would be the preference. But we've got a task still in front of us. But let's celebrate the success. Let's celebrate the return of New Orleans to prominence and the whole region. I was born here, but I came back here after being away for 50 years, and it's sort of nice to say what's different about New Orleans, and it's in the heart. And people who live here understand that, and people who don't live here don't understand that. But this is the only city I know of that feels like Europe, or the Caribbean, or someplace else, but is also America. It's also the South, but it's not the South.
My partner Aaron Dirk says New Orleans is the Paris of America. So.
Yes. And others I've heard say the Venice, but that's only because of the canals. So but again, talk about the heart, Laura, making your home here. And a Canadian, eh?
Y'all, eh?
Yeah, I think particularly in my neighborhood, and I tend to be pretty neighborhood centric just because of what we do. But I think that there are still sections of the city that are slower to recover. And I think the interesting thing about the people that have resettled, that have returned, is that they do love their communities so much. And certainly new residents like myself as well. I think that you have to love New Orleans, and you have to love the neighborhood that you're living in order to have made this commitment, and in order to have spent this time in your recovery. And what that's done is given us a population of people who really do truly love to live here, and that's a wonderful place to be.
Laura, please give everybody, if you don't mind, a web address or an email address or a phone number for people who want more information about lower9.org, want to get involved, want to volunteer. And, of course, we're always thrilled to have people who want to get involved on the financial end with No Place Like Home, lower9.org, and our other rebuilding partners.
Yeah, our website address is www.lower9.org. And any information that anybody needs about the organization, they can reach me at 504-344-4884. It'd be my pleasure to talk to them.
Now, wait just a minute, because at this moment, somebody's running to grab a pen and paper. So, okay,
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, so let's give it again. Let's give it again.
It's www.lower9.org. And all of our contact information is on that website. And my cell phone number is 504-344-4884.
And Steve, if people
Let's remember, just dial 211.
That's
There you
true.
go.
The
There
information
you go.
and referral hotline. You
Very
can
true.
get
Our
information
partners,
of
Link.
all our partners through 211.
Call and they'll give you all the information. And they're also, I have to put in a plug, because they are your 24/7 go-to emergency and information line, and they're always there to help.
And also suicide hotline.
Yes, yes. So thank you, V-Link. And now, Nick, Tom, any last words to weigh in?
You know, we just love the things that we're doing in the city. We get testimonials and thanks from the customers that we're working with. We love New Orleans. We love to see it coming back, and we're happy to be part of it down at PosiGen. Thanks so much.
And if people would like to get in touch with you, website or phone number?
www.posigen, that's POSIGEN.com. It stands for Positive Generation. Or our phone number is 504-835-2510. That's 504. Oops.
There I go. I was going to say, go ahead. You beat me to it.
504-835-2510. Thanks.
Or even a number that might be easier to remember for our listeners. Just look at 866-POSIGEN.
Ah, very
That's why he's
good.
in
All
marketing.
right, Nick. That's why you're the marketing guy. No, I want to thank you all for joining me today, because it is an auspicious occasion in the 8th anniversary, and what we have done, the achievements we have made, and where we're going. And it all depends on you, our listeners out there, too. Thank you so much for when you do donate to United Way and partners like lower9.org. You are helping rebuild our region to make it stronger than ever. You're making this a kind of place we do all want to work, live, and raise our families. So on behalf of United Way and on lower9.org. I want to welcome, or rather thank, our executive director there, Laura Paul, with the lower9.org. Tom Nyhard, who is the CEO of Posigen Solar Solutions, along with Nicholas Napolitano, who is the marketing manager, and Steve Zimmer, who is the United Way of Southeast Louisiana's vice president for community mobilization and our No Place Like Home initiative. I'm Terry Westerfield. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you'll be back next week. And in the meantime, let's all live
United.